Is premiering the live stream.
Great, thank you. Thank you everybody for joining us. Before I say a more formal welcome, I'd like to call the meeting to order and quickly move to approve the minutes from our last meeting as submitted. I look for a second.
Second.
Great, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, fabulous. Okay, thanks everybody. So to those of you joining us on YouTube, thank you so much for your continued participation. A few quick reminders. Keep saving the date for our project launch, which will be Tuesday, June 8th at 7:30.
Before I say a more
Here
formal
on
welcome, I'd like to call the meeting to order.
And please also keep an eye on our updated page on the town site. You can find us under committees and councils, and that'll have all the latest information about our project. Also, I am pleased to point out that here on YouTube, as you're watching the recording, there is those captioning available. And a big thank you to Kirsten for figuring out how to make that happen. We're really, really excited about that. And that'll be available for all of our meetings that are recorded to YouTube going forward. More thank yous. Let me see who's here. Is Larry here yet? Okay, well, I'll save him for last then. Oh, actually, we're missing a couple people. I'm just gonna pause for a second before I go further. Let's see. Okay, so how about this? How about we do a little rejiggering of the agenda? I'll come back to my thank yous when everybody is here. And for now, let's talk about the RFP. And we have 10 minutes for that on the agenda. So I will pass it off to you, Charlene, just to give us a quick update on what you want our help with between now and the next meeting and just where you're at. You're on mute.
I think it's pretty much done for all intents and purposes. I would like everyone to review it. What we do need is we need a list of consultants, obviously, to who to send it to. We need a timeline of when we're going to send it to. And very importantly, and Kristen already raised this, is who do we send it to? Who's going to be responsible for collecting all the materials? And that should be somebody in the town because it's a town thing. And in truth, we also need the approval of the board to send out the RFP to this list that we have to compile. Mm-hmm. And that list, it's not as, what I can do is I can compile a list of people that I know. I will ask Ed Burrows for his input. We can talk to Jan about it also, on who he thinks it should be sent out to, and then decide on when to send it out and who to send and who is going to receive it. I put in just a number of 10 of the copies of it, but we're also asking for it digitally. So it's an arbitrary number, whatever you guys think, or want. Mm-hmm. It may be like us and the board, that amount. So just think about it. I think it needs one more look-see, and also a review from other people, and then just go forward with it.
Great. That's fabulous.
Yeah, it's general. I mean, if you've looked at it, it's more general than we've talked about, but I think that we really can't go into minutia because then we'll be writing the plan and not giving everybody else a chance to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Great. So how do you envision, I know we've talked about when we get the responses back from the survey, we could either include them sort of like an appendix at the end.
Yeah.
That might be the easiest thing.
Yep.
Okay.
And just say, you know, this is the amount, this is to give you an idea of what this picture is, you know, this limited picture is.
Mhm. Great.
The survey was wonderful, by the way, but, you know, and I think it will be very helpful.
Fabulous. Anything else on the RFP that you wanted to talk about, Charlene?
I don't know. I don't know if anybody has any comments on it. I'm not great. Yeah, go ahead.
I think we can continue to pass comments around,
Right. Okay.
you know, via the Google document. So if you don't have any requests, specific requests or.
No,
Cool.
just, you know, we just have to compile of certain things and just start thinking about who we want to be the repository of all the responses.
Right. Okay. Food for thought. Thank you so much. We're so ahead of schedule with that, and you've done an awesome job. That brings me back. I wanted to make sure everybody was here just to say big thank yous to the group. So in case you missed it, Kirsten found out how we can have closed captioning on these meetings. So recordings on YouTube, closed captioning for everything going forward, including our June 8th meeting. So that'll be really wonderful. Big thank you to Charlene for working all the work that you've done on the RFP over the past weeks and between last meeting and this meeting. Larry, thank you so much for the great work you've done on the survey. It's looking really great, and you've put in a lot of work between the last couple meetings, so thank you for that. John, thank you for looking into the grant opportunity that popped up. Really appreciate that. We will talk about that later in the meeting. Keep up the fantastic work, everybody. Thank you so much. So we rejiggered the agenda a little bit. We already talked about the RFP, but now we can get into the meat of the survey. So I will hand it off to you, Larry. I was thinking that it might be nice for you, instead of, since we do have a nice chunk, at least a half an hour, we can actually go through the survey and just talk about the questions and gather feedback now. And that would save you some time waiting for people to respond after the meeting. But I defer to you in terms of what you would like to use the half an hour for, Larry. Oh, can't hear you.
Right now,
Yep.
There we go. Okay, my microphone wasn't fully plugged in. I think that is a good idea that we can go through some of the survey questions. And if you like, I think I could probably share a screen so that we have something to look at using the Surveymonkey tool that we put the beta test together on.
Sure. If you want to, go ahead. I can also, if you want me to take notes.
Sure.
Whatever's easier for you.
Yeah, let me, I'll just pull it up as long as I have permission to do so. Share my screen.
Yeah.
And now I think everybody can see.
Yeah.
This is like the Surveymonkey dashboard. Just so you know, this is like it's a free service. There are other similar services that you can use to collect information, but this is specifically designed for surveys, and it's very easy to use. There is a free version which will allow us to do a beta test, but of course, if we want to do anything more than collect a few responses and do anything more than a very, very limited small selection survey, we would need to purchase the paid version. But for our purposes for now, to test something out and see how something like this could work, I think it seemed to be okay. So what I did is I designed the survey just using the tools that they provided. And what I'll do is I'm going to look at the responses. I think this is the best way to do it. because this is the type of thing that we can provide to the consultant. So again, this is very limited number of responses that will be in here, but this shows the questions that were in the survey. And I think I will just run through the questions very quickly. And I think what deserves probably a little bit more review and discussion is the introduction to the survey. But let's just look at the questions first. I got some comments back from most of the people that are on the committee. And a few of the people on the committee did take the survey already. So let's just go through how I put these together. The first one is, what's your connection to the town of Louisboro? Depending on how this survey is circulated, we could end up getting people who really don't have a connection to the town of Louisboro, and maybe we're just curious and pulled up the survey and filled it in. This question was set up as a multiple choice question, and Kirsten did note that when she took the survey that you can only choose one response, and that needs to be changed so that respondents can choose more than one response here. But it's basically set up to understand if people answering the survey, respondents are residents, employees, or owner or employees, employee of the town, or owner or employees of a private business. And the tool just allows you to put together the responses and see how they responded. So you can see there's a very limited number of responses just from a few people in here.
Can I jump in with a quick question, Larry?
Absolutely.
On that question, I see it's great that there's other, please specify, but then there's also none of the above / prefer not to answer. I'm just curious what everybody thinks about that, because if we get a lot of that prefer not to answer, it will kind of be scratching our heads as to what to do with the information.
That was just, I tried to include a none of the above, prefer not to answer on most of the questions, just because that's a recommended survey technique. So we could take that out and just leave it as just leave kind of a other, please specify, and we could still get people just checking that off and not responding.
Yeah, if they really didn't want to respond, they could write prefer not to answer in the other section, sort of. I don't know. What does everybody think?
Well, I assume
Yeah.
you have to be, are we taking input from people that are neither employees nor residents? Are you eligible to be?
Well, it depends, Mark, how we circulate this. So if we had like a very targeted mailing list where we knew we were only going to get people who are residents or business owners or town employees, we probably wouldn't need to include that option. But I could see how you could have somebody who lives in Katona, who's in the town of Bedford, or somebody from North Salem who fills out the survey, and in that case, I don't know. I guess the answer is we probably will not have a very targeted distribution, and so that I'm not saying that we shouldn't eliminate that choice, but we should all just think about that we probably will have some respondents who don't really have a connection to the town, and we may still want to hear what they have to say.
As long as we know that, which could make, if they answer none of the above, but they aren't connected to the town, then we might have a hard time sort of parsing that out.
I would think that if we get people who are responding from Katona and North Salem, I don't know that I think we want to sort that out, right?
Right. So that is, that goes to like one of the very basic premises of the survey that we didn't discuss is, do we want to collect respondents' personal information as far as like their names and their residences? And I don't think we really discussed that at length, but I thought that this was going to be an anonymous survey.
I think it probably should be, but
Yes.
we maybe have something that just makes sure that they're resident of Lewisboro, one of those categories that's connected to the town. We don't want somebody who's got nothing to do with anything and they're in North Salem or Katona answering it.
Well, if it's an other, they either put something down or they don't put something down. And if they don't put some, we don't really have to count them in if in fact that we don't know whether they are or they aren't a resident because they preferred not to answer. So I would agree with Katie taking none of the above out, leaving the other, and then see what we get back. I don't think there will be a big distribution to other people unless we do it at the supermarket.
So there's an option for being employee of the town. There are probably more employees of the Board of Ed than there are of the town. But we don't have is that applicable? If they're a teacher or a school bus driver or a administrator of John Jay or?
Well, my thinking was an employee of the town, they may have a lot more knowledge about specific issues that the town is dealing with, where a resident who's not very much involved in the day-to-day activities really might not have that same level of knowledge. So, if we're able to look at what the town residents are seeing as the issues that the town is facing, I think that actually might be something that the consultant would maybe value, maybe more significantly or maybe less significantly than the public at large. But I do think it's a good, potentially a good a good piece of data to have.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with Larry on that one.
Me too.
The school is a whole different thing. I'm not sure about that so much.
They could write that in other if they wanted to respond.
I don't, yeah, they can write another because I don't think it should be included in a specific question because then, you have the people who work for this thing or people who are involved in churches. It's, I agree that an employee of the town is important information, but not as to other employees.
Okay.
Thank you. And we think we're all on the same page about eliminating the none of the above.
Yeah, I think so.
Option, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And then let's see. And then I did note that Kirsten suggested that we should make this check all of the applicable boxes and not just multiple choice. Okay, so let me just scroll down to the next question. How long have you lived in Louisboro? I think this can potentially be interesting because I think people who just moved to Lewisboro will have different feelings about somebody who's been here for a long period of time. Ooh, my dogs disagree. All right.
No, I think that's good information to have, actually.
Definitely.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
So I'm on I'll move on to question 3 then. We can always go back, but just in the interest of time, I'll try to keep it moving. And I only have 9 questions in here total. So I think we should be able to get through everything. How would you name that part of the town of Lewisboro in which you live? In here, I did put the hamlets, and I wanted to leave an extra space. The question here is, do you leave this just open so that somebody could fill in whatever they want? Or do you kind of give them a little bit of guidance? And I was aiming to be kind of a mixture here, because if somebody felt a real really strongly about like living in a lake community, for instance, I want to give them an option to fill that in. Or if somebody wanted to describe where they live differently, I think it was good to have that option.
I think that's a great question, by the way.
Yeah. I think the only thing that might be confusing is I don't know how many people really know about the Lewisboro hamlet as a hamlet.
Well, they're not really hamlets. I mean, we call them hamlets, but if they don't have a center, some kind of commercial hub, they're not really hamlet.
Yeah, I would think most of the people who live in Louisboro Hamlet think they live in South Salem.
I think the way you worded it is really awesome,
Yeah.
Larry.
But I think that's
I like-
really, yeah.
I like having Louisboro as a choice because that might just be how someone names where they live. And you've made that clear by the way you've worded it.
Why don't you just say what part of Louisboro? What part of Louisboro do you live? Well, now they might not live there, right? So they may, I'm an employee or I have a business. I don't live in Louisboro. But anyway, but I think when you say, how would you name that? Like, are you suggesting they come up with a different name or rename it? I'm just thinking, like, how would you name it? It sort of seems like you're asking them, what part of Louisboro do you live in, right?
Well, we've talked about this pretty extensively on previous meetings that, people identify where they live and they have different feelings about their place and, how they name it. So this gives them the flexibility to either go by the book and what their official hamlet is, or if they would like to name where they live somewhere else, because that is very interesting, how people identify where they live.
Yeah, no, I think having that other option is good because we might learn some things about how people view hamlets versus not hamlets and such.
I agree.
Yeah, there are a lot of neighborhood associations. There's also corridors. I could see somebody saying, I live in the 35 corridor or the 121 corridor or something like that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what people say.
So for this is one example, but we've been through others. One of the tools that this has that we've discussed is where there are word responses. It doesn't show it on here, but there is with the paid version. You can create the word map where if we get a lot of responses that say Lake Truesdale, for instance, in this example, the Lake Truesdale would show up a bunch of words on a page and in a kind of a grouping. And the Lake Truesdale, if it got a lot more responses than the other ones, would appear very large compared to the other ones. So we could use that.
Larry, do you get the raw data or you just get this summary?
This is just an analytical summary tool, so you could graphically look at things very quickly, but you get the raw data. So we can go through the data, and if we wanted to, like in the first question where we were talking about town employees, if we just wanted to see what the town employees thought, we could pull that data out and analyze that.
Cool.
Okay, we could come back to this if we need to further discuss it or make some changes. What things do you like best about the town of Louisboro? And you can see I did give answers. This is another question where do you just leave it entirely blank, or do you give some direction of like the types of responses that you're looking for? For this, I actually did a little bit of online research to see, there are national polls of what type of answers people give nationally. And I tried to use those similar answers and then leave us some empty space so that we could even compare the town of Louisboro and what people think compared to other places where the same poll question has been answered or asked, by different organizations. So these the choices on here were based on like some of the other questions that I saw have been similarly asked. And the question again is, sorry, I scroll down. What things do you like best about where you live, or about the town of Louisboro where you work?
I think that's another fine question. I really like that.
Question 5. We're about halfway through. If a resident, comma, I think there should be a comma in there, help me, those of you who have better English skills than I do, and you anticipate leaving the town of Louisboro, what do you think would be the primary causes of you moving away? This is another question where I did a little bit of research to see what are the typical responses, and I did include most of the typical responses in here, and they're cut off in the graph, so I'll just scroll down so that you can see them. The two on here that I added in from some of the online research was high cost of living and a change in climate or environment, which I thought might be typical answers, and also on this leaving space where somebody could answer and fill in the blank. But this was also another multiple choice question. And the multiple choice questions, the idea is make it quick, so somebody could just go through, quickly check it off, and in 5 minutes they're done with the survey. Because what we don't want to do is get a lot of surveys that are halfway completed because it was taking longer than people anticipated.
Yeah.
All right, question 6, where do you work? And this is really more just like, do you work in town or away from town or work at home? So you can see that I based this off of these 4 responses. Are you not currently working or retired? Are you working at home? Are you working in town or locally with less than a 20 commute? Or you commuting longer than 20 minutes to work?
You know, now that I look at it, I think I have one. I think having 2 questions, not currently working and having retired, gives you a little more information rather than have them smushed together.
Mhm.
So for question number 6, the idea is to make it into 2 questions. So if you're not currently working, maybe there's a couple of other options. Like, are you a student? Are you retired? Are you looking for work? So maybe that's, let's make that question 6A. Are you working? Are you currently working?
And then having the retired, not currently working student, blah, blah, blah.
I think you can just leave it as number 6, where do you work? But you could just add more answer bubbles. Not current student, not currently working, retired, work at home.
Because one of the issues, I believe, that's going to be an issue when we go asking for some input is there are a lot of older people now within the town of Louisboro. And I think you can get an idea of how many people are retired. And that will be very helpful to the consultants.
Question, Charlene and the other people on the committee, is that information going to be available through the census and the household American Household Survey? Do you know?
We got what I don't remember whether it's that you had retired, you had age, and that's how it was divvied up.
The other useful piece about this question is it gives us a sense of how many people are working from home, which is definitely useful information to have. So it's filling in a sort of multi-purpose, and how far they commute is also useful for the plan too. So I think it's a really valuable question.
Of course, working from home right now is a little skewed.
Right.
I guess you could have multiple selections here too. Why don't I try to make this a check the box and have people where they could check multiple boxes?
That's a good idea.
Okay. Yes.
Check all that apply.
I don't know if you want to add hybrid on there, because that's a variation of work from home, which is going to be quite common soon.
Right. Part-time work from home or something.
So I would say that if you're working local, it could be 20, 25. It can take me 25 minutes to get from one side of Louisboro to another. So I would say that working in town or local, like for me, local would be kind of within 30 minutes. I mean, maybe within Louisboro, Pound Ridge, Ridgefield, White Plains, or whatever, would be kind of like local. Because I would think like if you commute longer, maybe expand that, maybe commute longer than 30 minutes, or
Sure.
or are you trying to find out like, are they here because they're close to a train station to go to like White Plains or New York City or Stanford? Is that what we're thinking? Like they're commuters, like rail commuters?
Well,
Yeah.
if you want to know that, you should ask that.
Yeah, I think I had a question like that in one of the earlier versions of this survey where I included how you get to work.
Right.
But Mark, you're like, that's a good point. Like if you're in Vista and you're going to Golden's Bridge, God, that's like longer than the average American commutes to work, which is I think about 23 or 24 minutes.
I don't think it hurts to change it to 30.
See, I think if you really want that, I think you should go back to reconsidering how do you get to work, because I think that's something we probably want to know. One of the issues that I hear all the time is the lack of access to the trains and parking. I get that a lot.
If folks think that's an issue, though, they could write that in number 8 in terms of what are the biggest challenges. It would come up, hopefully.
All right, well, this
So-
seems like this deserves more thought and we should come back to this.
Yeah, let's circle back. There.
Because I did think that was kind of important. I know I was a commuter I'm still a commuter, but I commute by car, but I was a commuter to Manhattan for a long time and, trying to find parking and figuring out, do I take the shuttle bus or do I drive to the train station or do I drive to a White Plains train station? Like it was a real challenge to try to figure out how to commute into Manhattan. I know there's residents that commute into Stamford and Greenwich and all kinds of different places. So maybe this is a good question where we need to add back in some more information on commuting to work.
And I think we have a lot of new residents who are escapees from Manhattan, who probably are going to have to go back. I just had somebody move in next door to me, and he said, "How do I get to the train station? How do I?" And I
It's not easy. You have to
Yeah,
plan
well,
it
how
like
you-
6 months in advance or 6 years in advance, depending on how long the wait is for a
Right,
parking
New
pass.
Canaan won't even let non-New Yorkers park there. So
Okay, let's circle back to this one.
Let's circle back because that is like I think that is important for a comprehensive plan to understand that. But the other thing is this could get respondents thinking, so that when they get to a question like this about what would you change about the town if it was possible, they could kind of just openly put in whatever they want, as you could see some of the respondents did here. And then we could use a word map where, if train station comes up a lot or driving or things like that, those words come up a lot in the responses. We could word map it and see what type of responses came up, or we could do a little bit more work and actually go through these and try to break these into categories about what people think should be changed about the town. And those general categories could be something to do with like transportation or telecommunications or whatever may come up as the results.
well, sometimes you want to give a little hint on the stuff that we would like to know.
Right. So if we have these open, well, that's what I was thinking. If you have these like totally open-ended questions at the end, so we're getting towards the end of the survey where we've asked a couple of questions to get people thinking. The thought is having these open-ended questions at the end of the survey, after people have kind of got some leading questions, hopefully they would be thinking about some of the things that we've asked about. These open-ended
Remember,
questions.
this is going to be the first of a number of surveys too.
Right.
And I think what we learn from this is going to be invaluable to the consultants to continue on the surveys and to make them more expansive. And narrow it down to what they want to what we really want to see.
Yeah, agree. I think these last two questions are awesome. I know we had talked about it previously, and I love that you worked more stuff into the introduction, Larry. But I'm wondering if maybe it would be good to take the bit from the introduction about the topics that New York State recommends be included in the plan, and then the other topics that we might also want to include in the plan. If instead of having those in the introduction, we have those as one final question, like the check all that apply, and then it could kind of double as education, and we could get actual checkbox responses on what things are important to people. And that might get them thinking too, in terms of answering the open-ended questions. What do you like and what are the challenges?
I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Oh, you're on mute, Larry.
Let's go back to that introduction, or let's go to the introduction then, which we didn't cover. I think there's maybe one more question. Oh, yeah, the most basic one, keep it at the end, that's quick, just what's your age? And this was like, the categories are just based on like pre-working, early in career, later in career, and retired, or trying to pick like very general categories.
Yeah, that looks great.
All right, let me see if I could figure out how to go back to the introduction. I think if I just scroll back up. Questions, summaries. Summary. All right, I think you guys can all still see my screen.
Mhm.
And let's go to, let's see, design survey. Oh, here we go. Okay, so I think we have the introduction now up on the screen, which you should be able to see. You can see you could add a logo and other artwork here once we have the version of the survey that we like. And here's the introduction about the survey. One thing I think that we should also include, probably right up front, where I think it'll take less than 5 minutes to complete the survey, is that what the survey will be used for. I think we should maybe say something like, this survey will be used to guide the steering committee and potentially outside consultants in the next step of updating the comprehensive plan, or something like that.
I don't think you should put in the consultant, just put in the steering committee. And I also think there should be something said that the town board is the ultimate arbiter of the comprehensive plan.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Okay. I'm just taking some notes. Okay. All right. Well, the first paragraph, Town of Louisboro appointed a steering committee to implement a process to update the Town of Louisboro's comprehensive plan. The town's current master plan was created in 1985 and last reviewed for an update in 1999. Comprehensive plan, also known as a general plan, master plan, or land use plan, is designed to guide the future actions of a town, city, or county. It presents a vision for the future with long-range goals and objectives for all activities that affect the local government. The process to update the comprehensive plan may take 18 months to 2 years and involve significant public input.
I would put land use activities that affect local government.
And then may take 18 months to 2 years and will involve significant public input.
I think we should say something about water, land and water courses. I don't know if it fits their land use, but so much of the lake communities and drinking water. I just think water is an important thing to mention.
Does
Mark,
that
let's
fall
let's
yeah.
let's look at that and let's come back to that in just a second. I think this next section is what Katie was suggesting. Maybe we put this into the survey. So this is just from like some state legislation where it says what it recommends being in a comprehensive plan is basically just cut and paste. I tried not to edit this down too much.
You know what, in looking at it, I think it should be dual, because some things you don't have to have a check off, but you can keep this because that's a pretty good idea of what is needed, and then have as a last question, take those things which you can say, you know, this is of import to me or not. You know, like sustainability, diversity, doing business in the town of Louisboro. Those are something that could be in a choice question. But this gives everyone an educational idea of what they're doing.
I just worry we might lose people, that it's a lot of words.
It is a lot of words.
I have to admit that even as a committee member, when I opened the survey and I started reading, I was like, uh-oh, I don't have enough time to read this. I'm just going to skip to the questions.
Well, how about you just end it at after the proposed measures programs, and then the second part of it becomes the question.
I think I agree with Katie on that one. I think they're going to get to the questions. I don't know how much of this they're going to read.
Right.
But if we move it down to be its own question, I mean, we edit it. We can actually, in a previous draft, took a stab at editing, like instead of saying existing and proposed recreation facilities and parkland, just say open spaces / parks. Like I took a stab at editing it down. But if we have it as a question, then it doubles as education too, but without them having to read it up front.
Yeah, and at the end, you know, if they get tired and, you know, they'll either answer it or they won't, but at the end, won't cause any harm, I guess. Well,
Okay.
some people, if there's too much at the beginning, they'll just say, you know, I'm not doing this.
That's how that's how we originally had the survey, these as like questions where respondents can rate how important these things are to them. And I moved it up to the front thinking like make it more educational, but also the free version of Surveymonkey only allows 10 questions. So I was also trying to get down to below 10 questions. So I could certainly, once we have the go ahead on this, we could certainly expand the survey a little bit.
Well,
So I
aren't
think
you at 9? So this would be 10.
we're at 9, and this could be another 1 or 2 questions. And there's also that transportation question that we were going to come back to. And Mark mentioned about water. And I just want to, at the very bottom of this, I did put in like a note, when responding, please remember that the town of Louisboro includes 5 hamlets. Please note that the Katona-Louisboro School District is a separate taxing jurisdiction, and the town of Louisboro has little influence over its budget, operations, and future planning.
Very nice.
Additionally, the town of Louisboro's location within several watersheds limits land use intensity and development capacity. But Mark, I think you were thinking of something else, maybe.
I think you've hit it there. And again, I agree, we don't want to get too much into it, but I just don't. So the 1999 refresh of the 85 survey, the top 2 most important things were based on the 13 Hamlet committee responses were open space and water quality, drinking water, protecting drinking water and water courses. So you've referred to water twice. There's something about like, it's not estuaries, but it was early. So there's two hints about water here, but I guess it's sort of water quality. I mean, I was just on a Zoom with the town board, I guess, and we were hearing a lot of talk about addressing issues. Wells have been impacted. And in some of the Oak Ridge, I think it was a condominium, the towns and states are investing a lot to deal with pollutants in drinking water in wells. And I don't know how.
Well, yeah, Oak Ridge is a special case, but the term, and Charlene can tell me about but I think the best known term in town is wetlands. That's what most people know.
Well, there's also protecting drinking water is an issue that wells are being impacted by salt and herbicides and pesticides, and and then there were the condominium issues, and so but anyway, I don't know that you need to get into in this preamble. I don't know if you need to get into it. I would, and you may have this implicit in this survey, but what I'd like to hear really directly is what do you, if somebody's bothering to respond to the survey for us to help inform our program here, I would like to hear from them. What do you think should be addressed or included in the master plan?
I don't think that we should have that open-ended question.
Well, what the checkbox thing that we're talking about, like which of these are important, would actually answer that question, because it would be, these are all the things that are possible in a master plan, check what you're interested in. So I think that would accomplish what you're saying, Mark, really nicely.
Yeah, otherwise it's too open-ended and extraneous stuff can come in.
And you have an other on that one, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think we're in really good shape. Thank you, Larry. This looks amazing.
Yeah, nice job.
We can spare 4 more minutes if you want to circle back to the transportation question.
I have one question about little influence, and I guess the question is for Jane, because I don't think you have any influence, but I would defer to Jane.
What's the question? I'm sorry. How much?
Whether you have little influence on if you have little or is it none on school budgets?
Oh, none.
None.
Okay.
Because we don't want to give false pretenses here. There's no.
No.
Oh, I see. So the town of
Yeah.
Louisboro has no influence over.
Right.
Okay. So Larry can change that. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Larry.
All right, so we'll do another version of this. I'll edit this and I'll just recirculate.
Cool.
But I think we're in a position where we could probably get close to a final survey, maybe with one more round. So I think we're in
I think
good
consultant
shape.
would be jealous of this. It really is good.
The nice thing about this is once it's ready, like I sent it out to the steering committee as a link. So this could be just embedded on a website for the town. It could be sent out by email. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. And that's another thing that we should just circle back on and finalize is how this should be distributed. And my thought is we shouldn't make this we shouldn't blast it everywhere on social media and so forth. It really should be limited to town web pages. Maybe some the public library website, but we should be directing people locally and not blasting it out and getting potentially responses from people that really aren't that interested in Louisboro or don't live in Louisboro or work in Louisboro.
I agree.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that next week, and between now and then, if anybody has any final thoughts that they didn't voice tonight, just get an email to Larry and as soon as possible, next couple days, and then he can do the final updating and we can be ready to send it out for the June 8th meeting. Thank you so much, Larry.
Thank you.
Okay, next agenda topic, since we already talked about RFP. Let me just get my screen ready to share. So we have 10 minutes. So I figured the best use of our time in terms of the June 8th meeting. I do have a draft of the slides posted to the shared drive, but I figured we could talk about which slides, how we're going to divvy up the presenters. So basically I've done it so that there's 3 slides a piece. And there's not a ton of content per slide, so they could probably between 2 and 3 minutes per slide, which would get us to 45 minutes total. But in terms of the order, I was thinking I would kick it off, welcome everybody, and then Charlene would go next with a couple slides about the what and why of comprehensive planning. John would finish up what and why of comprehensive planning. And then Larry could talk about the how of comprehensive planning, sort of going over the process and the graphic that shows sort of our timeline. And then Mark could go last and just really focus in on the slides that show how you can get involved through each stage of the process. And then I would come back in and wrap it up and just remind people to take the survey website, etc.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Good? Okay, awesome. So then I think, I mean, if we want to talk generally about slides right now, we can, but I think probably the most efficient way to do it is now that we're all good with the section we're doing, if you just pop into the slide deck, I can show really quickly the way that I've done it is, where's my PowerPoint? Okay, like I've got speaker's notes so that in the document we're all looking at, it'll be really easy. It shows the slide, and then I'll update it so that it shows the speaker is Charlene. And then, can everybody see the PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then it has some talking points, and then I have sources in there too, just so we're not plagiarizing anything too terribly. Yeah, so we can just go back and forth and edit our speaker's notes, and then next week we can just check in to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with their the visual of the slide and the content that they're supposed to talk about. Does that seem like a good plan?
Yep.
So, yeah, I think this having a week to work on what we would like to say and how we'd like to say it, if we can fill it out a little bit, that would be good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to look at it, so.
Oh, and I just put this up yesterday, so it
Okay.
was, I didn't expect anybody to look at it. And I'm just stuck on slide. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so I tried to like put some draft speaker's notes, but obviously we can each go in and edit it a little bit.
I love your graphics, Katie.
Thank you. They're just they're working with the PowerPoint template. They're not the most attractive thing.
It's good.
Whatever works. I did spend a lot of time on the internet trying to find cool pictures that would illustrate points, and it's in like an endless rabbit hole. So I had to stop. Okay. Well, does anybody have any specific questions?
No, I think one of the things that we would have to say is that every time we do something with or every time you do something with your property, it has to be in in conjunction with the comprehensive plan. So it's gonna affect the development of the whole of your property and everyone else's property.
Well, it's a little, I mean, not everything.
Yeah, yeah, that's gonna be, you're right. You're right.
We're going to scare
Most
people.
everything.
We'll scare people off if we say everything. So
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing we have to sort of work the speaker's notes to make sure that, you know, we'll try to have between now and next meeting, is everybody comfortable committing to looking at this? And there will be basic speaker's notes for each of the slides for you to work off of. But if you want to edit and add, do that between now and next meeting.
sure.
Is everybody comfortable committing to that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. And then that way we can all make sure we're good with what everybody else is going to say. And if we can stick to our scripts strictly, then that'll help us make sure that we keep the entire thing to 45 minutes.
Great.
Katie, do we have like is there like a general like timeline that you're thinking for? Is it like 10 minutes per speaker / section, or 5 minutes, or
5 minutes.
somewhere in between?
I have to go in.
3 minutes?
I'll have to go in here and add that. But I think if we're each doing 3 slides each, if we can keep our comments between 2 to 3 minutes per slide, 3 at the absolute maximum.
Katie will have a little window at the bottom, and if you're going too long, she's going to give you give you the hook.
We'll have to talk about that. It might be helpful to have that countdown clock, but we'll see if it's necessary.
Get a video of a sand timer, you know.
Yeah.
We can have a buzzer.
Now, this is going to be, the idea is that this will be like a live presentation, but it's not like a audience participation.
Right. No Q&A.
Are we going to have like are we going to have any like questions allowed in the chat at the end, and like a moderator, or is it just a presentation? And
Just a presentation, because we're thinking we would just have it live on YouTube. We're not actually going to have people joining us via Zoom. Because we can definitely have those kind of forums down the line, but I don't think we're really ready for that yet.
Yeah, there might be questions we just can't answer at this point.
Yeah.
Can we just talk for a minute about the survey, high level? What are we going? What's the ultimate goal? What is it going to inform? Are we sort of using it as a tool to engage people in the process, or are you looking for it to inform our decision on the consultant, or what?
I think it's more, I think the way that we've talked about it, or at least the way that I've understood it, is that the survey would be used more to inform the consultant in responding to the RFP, so that if we have certain questions that, you know, we all have feelings about what the town may or may not need, or maybe we just like it the way that it is. But there may be things that that we're going to get from the respondents that we wouldn't have thought about. So that by providing all these responses to the planners when they're responding to the RFP, they may say, like, if for example we have a question in transportation, they may say, well, you know, you have a big commuting problem because all these people have nowhere to park their cars. Maybe they'll respond and address that perceived need from their review of the responses. That's what I was envisioning, that these responses are going to generate, these respondents are going to give us information that we can provide to the planners in responding to the RFP and giving us suggestions, because we don't know what we're asking for necessarily, right? We're just asking for the planners to provide recommendations on what we should be doing and giving us a menu of options.
I
If
think
I
we
look-
also, I think we'll also get some information out of the limited demographics of who's responding, you know, in age groups or hamlet groups or what all of that. We're going to find out, is it broad interest? Is it centered in certain areas? Those kinds of things I think will be very informative.
I think also it sets the stage for transparency. It sets the stage for everyone to know that we really want their input, that we're not sitting here deciding. So I think it's actually very, very good
Yeah.
that we have an initial survey.
And I think there's some interest in what we're doing just from the things that the people have come to me or things that have been sent to me. That I think people are curious what we're doing, you know, why we're doing it and that kind of stuff. So it's good to get it. It's good to get it out there.
So
Yeah.
I'm struggling. Why is it not good to ask them directly what they think should be included in the master plan?
I thought we were in agreement that we are going to ask them which of the following topics that are typically included in the master plan do you think are most important? Check all that apply, and then they'll check the boxes.
But they have an option for other, right? Like, so if we
Yes.
forgot something like, I don't know, internet service or
Yeah, so they can write in
they
whatever
could, they
want.
could check other. And then you'll get from that the words. Is that where you did like that scattergram where you could see which words were most
Yes.
used? So like you would get that tool.
Yeah.
So it's like shockingly people say, oh, you know, traffic, that's everybody says traffic, you know, that would kind of inform the consultants or like, so we're trying to use this to give, so for transparency, and also it'd be very interesting to see, we may get respondents, 85% of the people may be unemployed that are responding. And then it doesn't mean that 85% of the people who live in Louisboro are unemployed. It just means that people that have the proclivity to respond happen to be unemployed.
They have nothing else
We'll
to
have
do.
to figure that out, but
Right.
okay. So
Yeah.
this is just trying to like give the consultants, show that we've kind of given them a little bit of homework and we're testing the waters and.
So what do you think about this? So when we interview them, you know, what do you think about this? What do you think about that?
Yeah.
And they know. a
No, I
little
mean,
bit
the
of-
more we gather, I mean, let's face it, if you write a review on Amazon, you don't usually write it when you're happy with the product. So
Right. Well, and this is the community's first chance to participate, and I think that's really important. And a survey goes to our mission of fair and equal participation, that you don't have to attend a meeting at a certain day or time. You can do the survey whenever you have 5 minutes, as long as you have access to the internet. That's the only barrier to entry. So I think this is the easiest and fairest way we can get public input initially.
I think it stirs interest too. I think it's great.
Yeah. I'm gonna put a pin in this just so we don't cut Jane and Dan off and they have enough time. We have until 8:45 for Jane and Dan on the agenda. So if you guys have general comments or answers to questions that were brought up earlier in the meeting, now's your time. Who wants to go first? Dan. Oh, Jane. You want Jane to go first?
He's pointing to me. I thought he was pointing to his mute button. I don't have that much to add, Joel. You've been working really hard and thank you so much. And I agree with Charlene, the RFP. I had a chance to give it a look-see. And as far as putting any more specific information in there, I think that already kind of outlining, which is where we just wound up, already kind of outlining, like, this is usually where a master plan or comprehensive plan goes. I like the idea of the survey and having an other box to give people that option, but I think going any further than that, and we might be stepping over the bounds of the planning process. And then the Surveymonkey, you'll be happy to hear, maybe Dan wants to share the news that we were approved for spending for it. So
Hey.
yes, and so we can talk about how to do that, but it should probably go through either Leo or Joel and be funded by the town. Well, yeah, so Dan, I see you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess somebody's got to whip out the credit card or something,
That's it.
which,
Yeah.
you know, in a town can sometimes be a really clumsy thing because they want to do everything by purchase order or whatever. So yeah, we'll just have to check in, figure out how somebody pays for it. But then, you know, one of you
Yeah.
folks or Kirsten should have the login for it, right? And she can be the gatekeeper to the use of it.
Yes. And
So,
I think we're
Kirsten,
gonna
do you have
work with it through, I can send a backroom email about this because I worked it out a little bit with Leo and Joel. And since you had been working with
Perfect.
Joel, Dan, to set up the Gmail and all of that, we were, aw.
No,
Came over
Kirsten just got a hug. Oh my goodness. I know. Oh, that's sweet. Hi, Orion. Happy late Mother's Day. In any case, so we kind of have it all worked out. It's just a
Great.
matter of like, so Kirsten will have the login then. That makes the most sense. Okay.
probably. Yeah, she's the staff member, so, you know,
Sounds good.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Great. Great.
Thank you for
thanks
that. That's awesome.
Yes, thank you for being in touch about it. And I'm glad we were able to get that done last night.
Yeah, that's great news, Larry.
So I came in late, so I don't have that much. This is my third meeting of the night after housing and 40 minutes with the bike pedestrian committee.
I
And the
hear you.
housing folks
My
are all like,
third, and I have a fourth,
and you have a fourth after this.
24
Yeah.
minutes.
So
Yeah.
there's one topic we definitely want Jane and Dan to hear about. Maybe we just pivot to that quickly. John is taking the lead on potentially our applying for a grant. So maybe I'll just let John say a few words about that. But we wanted just to have an open conversation here in this public forum where people are listening on YouTube as well, just so that we're fully transparent.
Okay, so New York State has a thing called a consolidated funding application. And they put in about $1 million a year. And it's kind of region-based, so we'll be in the Mid-Hudson Valley. So we'll be kind of competing with applications in the Mid-Hudson Valley. I talked to Peter today about this to make sure that we aren't competing with some other Louisboro application, and we're not. So they have a couple of applications in, but not to this one. So the deadline is July 30th. The process is that I believe we have to get the town board approval. Somebody has to register. And then once you're registered, then you can start through the application process. And I believe they have an application wizard that takes you through it. Charlene sent me one that's related, but not quite the same. It was 130 pages. But I think that from what I can see, well, a couple of things that I observed. I went through the 6 pages of previous year's grants. And of those 6 pages, almost everything is very specific requests for money, like a sewer or, something very specific. There were a couple of comprehensive planning ones in there, but not many. So that's one of our challenges. But I think a lot of the information that we would need to put in the application is probably already been put together in Charlene's RFP application. A lot of the sections look very similar. So I think we can lift a lot of what that's from there and bring it into ours. The other thing that it looks to me is if you really want to get this grant, you've got to be kind of hitting the hot spots they're interested in. And that includes affordable housing, green energy, sustainability, environment. Those are the things they're going to fund. I don't think they're going to fund just, hey, I want to do a comprehensive plan. That's probably not going to fly. You're on mute, Shirley.
We would have to work on the budget. I think that's,
Yeah,
and
we don't
right
have
now-
I think a
yeah.
challenge for us is we don't really have a budget yet. So
Exactly.
the other thing that I've heard a couple of places is that you apply and then you get turned down and then the second time you get funded. So we may apply this year, but we might get it next year. We'll still be going in 2 years,
Mhm.
in another year. So you know, a lot of the literature in this is about clone applications, which is just another way of saying people putting it, you know, towns putting it in for the second time. So I don't know what the odds are, but you know, we have about 2 months or so to get this thing together. I think a lot of it's there, and I think Charlene's right. Probably the one that we're going to have to be a little creative on is the budget. And the other thing is the comprehensive plan ones didn't get a lot of money in the ones that I read. So
They don't like paying for plans.
Right.
Kirsten, the consolidated funding application sign in to the Gateway grant at the, you know, the gate, we have that sign in, correct?
Grant Gateway, I would have to dig it up, but I have it.
Yeah. So we do have that already, John, because we did submit a consolidated funding application last
okay, so
year.
yeah, so that's
I
what we
don't, I don't
need.
think you need a resolution. You just need a concurrence of the board. It's only when it's going to be accepted would there be a resolution required.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we weren't competing with the board for some other things, but we're not.
No, yeah, not, no, it was we actually got that funded through something else, the culvert.
And the other one is the Oak Ridge thing, and that's a totally different thing. And
So by the way, the consolidated funding app is just that. It's like a front window to all the programming in the state. So it's certainly much more than $1 million that's out there, but it just depends on which, you know, program that you're targeting, but it's all the same interface.
well, part of it is,
application.
yeah, if the million is available for the New York Statewide Environmental Protection Fund, that's the one we would come under.
Okay, Environmental Protection Fund.
Right.
And,
So that's
and Smart Growth Program.
So
So-
my question for the sort of committee is, do we, obviously applying for a grant and not knowing if you're going to get it or not, it's not like we're committing to anything explicitly, but are we okay with the idea of saying we're going to apply to this grant because it's a good opportunity to get funding? It does acknowledge that if we get the grant and we use the money, that we will focus or include in the plan ideas of sustainability and environmental protection. We don't know 100% if we haven't done a survey yet. We haven't engaged the community yet. We don't know if those topics are important to the community. They're pretty general. It's probably safe to assume that the answer is yes, the community isn't interested in that, but I just want to make sure we're not crossing any boundaries here.
No, it's as long as we're just addressing sustainability, smart growth, and affordability. We're not stating that we're going to do it because it's a plan.
And I would just say that, you know, depending on the size of the application and the timeline, I'm going to have to pull everybody into some parts of this. But once I start going through the application process, there's a wizard. I'll know more about it. But was unable to really, you know, Bill Brady did not have a sample for me. So the closest thing I have is the one Charlene gave me, and that one is somewhat different.
John, I think what you said about applying twice is going to be twice as the charm. I think is quite accurate. And in fact, if we do it and we don't have all the information, we just put it in, we'll have that much more information and the program pretty much in place to do it the next year.
Yeah, I mean, what Peter said is the ones that he's seen, when they got turned down the first time, the second time, it was like, it was a given they were going to get the money.
Yeah, and we'll have a better idea of the budget, et cetera.
Right, so it's probably worth our while to get something in.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Good job, John. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John.
All right, so I guess I'll work with Kirsten to start the application process, and then I'll know more about it once I get into it. I mean, just to let you know, there's a 25-page booklet on how to apply, so.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Okay, decided about the grant. Any other questions for Dan or Jane?
Oh, yeah. who do you want to review the RFP?
Well, it has to get blessed by the board in general, but just
It
thinking
has
out
a
loud.
concurrence, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud, maybe we could even ask the attorney to take a look too, just like,
Yeah, that would be great.
right? And then, the entire board should at least take a scan over it, and, maybe we have a session where we're asking the committee some questions about it or something before it launches.
Darlene, or committee, do you want me to, the current form of the RFP? Do you want me to send that to the lawyer?
I think the committee really should look at it
Okay.
and Jan, and then send it from there, only,
Yeah, if we could have a couple weeks.
yeah,
So then just let us know.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, just wanted to know, and having the attorney would be really good, and
Yeah.
having maybe Jan also look at it is fine.
Mhm.
Okay, great.
I don't like Dan's idea that I'm gonna be questioned on it, because
The housing committee asked me like, oh, are they gonna have housing in it? And I said, oh, that's always a part of scope in these plans is at some level or other.
Dan, it's gonna be, or it is, it's not going into a lot of words, as Katie would say, because you don't really need it. We're not deciding the plan. We're just
No,
saying these are areas.
Yeah, I understand that. So I'm just like, I'm relating what they were asking, and they were interested in meeting you folks in one way or the other, and they may send you a note.
Well,
you know.
that the consultant, that's another thing. The consultant would be very helpful in that, because right now I really don't know, wouldn't have any answers for them.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that stage of the process, but, and I mean, it'd be great for them to reach out in the meantime. We can say hi, introduce
I
ourselves.
told them just, no harm in emailing, gave them, pointed them to the email address, and I
Perfect.
think making the connection is good.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Great. Well, we can, if you need to go to your next meeting, no hard feelings. But I think we can move into our just wrap up section. I have the list of action items up on the screen if anybody has any questions about those. These are from last meeting, so they don't have the new action items we've talked about tonight. But any questions on these or wrap up thoughts for our meeting tonight from committee members? We're in really good shape on a lot on the urgent, time sensitive stuff. So feeling really good about the work we've been doing, everybody. Okay, so between now and next meeting, the most time sensitive things are to number one, with the big star, if you have any lingering thoughts about the survey, get those to Larry ASAP, because we want him to have runway to the rest of the week, over the weekend, be able to work on that without any obstacles. And then we can have a new final draft next week to look at and finalize, and then it'll be ready to go out for the June 8th meeting. And then the other time sensitive thing is to look at the slides, and the 3 slides that you'll be responsible for the June 8th meeting, and to do any editing of that before our next meeting as well. That way we have time to finalize and practice between next meeting and between June 1st and June 8th. Does that sound okay to everybody?
Yep.
That sounds okay. And if I could just make a suggestion, if anybody else on the committee hasn't yet done the survey, or you want to do it again with fresh eyes, just take the survey and just, if you have comments on it, just put the comments into the open responses, and I'll make sure that those get filtered in and updated.
Do you want to set a deadline for that, Larry? Like, would by Wednesday night, Thursday night?
Or yeah, Thursday night, Friday morning. Say Thursday night. 2 days.
Yeah.
It's only 5. It's a 5-minute survey, and of course, if you have comments on it, it's going to take longer. But if you just run through it, it'll only take you a few minutes to go through it.
Deal. Okay, great. And in terms of the slides, just any edits to those by June 1st. And our next meeting, next Tuesday, June 1st, will be for 30 minutes. And then on Thursday, June 3rd, that's when we have our hour session with Jan Johansson. I need to just confirm that with him this week. But we're going to broadcast that on YouTube as well, so everybody will get to enjoy it. Okay, any lingering thoughts, final questions?
I just want to mention about having guest speakers. I would like to see when would be appropriate time to start to introduce some people. Like, one person I thought would be good for us to hear from for a few minutes was Jim Nordgren, who was the fellow who was the supervisor, I guess, at the time that we did the most recent plan. And he was very involved in land use, and he's also doing land use consulting for other communities in New England. That's his business now. But Jim was I guess he was the town manager during the 1999 to 2002 period.
So 1999 wasn't actually an update to the plan, was it? I'm confused.
No.
There were recommendations. Actually, Kristen did a really good job on the status of certain issues, but a lot of it just were recommendations that nothing was done on them. And is Jim, is he a consultant, a planning consultant? Because he may want to answer the RFP. So that would not be proper for him to give a
I don't think he's a
presentation.
planning consultant. I think he's a open space, wetland sort of advisor person, but he was a town manager, and I think they did a lot to develop the open space plans and funding in Louisboro, like Levee Preserve.
Well, he was a major force in this town on open space, on what they did in Leon Levy and a number of other things. He was.
Yeah, I know him. I just was wondering if he would be applying.
More of a naturalist forestry background, but we could ask him before inviting him to be a guest speaker if he would
Exactly.
be potentially responding to the RFP.
Yeah, why don't we do that? It certainly can't hurt.
Should we do that of all guest speakers?
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
We should think about the kinds of people we want to come in and talk to us, Maybe
Well, wait a second. When you said you want to know if he's going to be applying, haven't we had speakers that would be applying already? Like, didn't we have that Westchester planner? I thought we did, or maybe we attended something.
He's not applying. Ed Burrows, he has no intention of applying.
And Bill Brady is
He's
not
a county.
But we
Yeah.
ought to think about, the range of speakers we might want to come in. Do we want to have somebody from the commercial side of town come in and talk? Or do we want to, different areas to just come in and,
I don't know. Is it a little early to start that, especially people who have agendas pretty much,
Yeah.
because if you have one guest speaker, then anybody who wants to speak then really should be able to speak. And I don't know if we have the capacity to get all that information and you know, what would be the ultimate reason for it?
Yeah, the thinking with guest speakers so far has been, what education do we need as a committee
Mhm.
to understand how to do this comprehensive plan?
Right, and even like having the census person, he gave us some information. The consultant, now we have somebody that we can tell the consultant, okay, this is who you talk to. I don't even think that it's necessary that we have that information in depth at this point.
The next speaker, Jan, will give us an overview of
Yeah.
Comprehensive Planning 101, which I think will be
That's-
really useful for us and for the community.
Absolutely.
And then Jan and Judd, who's the attorney for the planning board, are going to give us an overview of how the planning board works and what that means for the comprehensive plan, which I think is really useful for us to kind of wrap our heads around. But beyond that, I think we kind of are hitting a wall on sort of comprehensive planning 101. But we do want to plan educational series for the community. So I think let's put our heads together. There's the working document of guest speakers in Drive. So Mark, like, you can go into that document, add your idea, add a little bit of text, and you know, this is why I think they'd be a good either guest speaker for the community at large, or to host an educational webinar for the community at large. And yeah, we can just pass ideas around with the Google document. Because we are all booked up until the 22nd of June. So we do have a little bit of a runway.
The assessor said she would be delighted to speak with you. Her daughter's getting married the middle of June. So it's the end of June will be the earliest she's available.
Okay, great. So we can look at that on the Google document too and go back and forth in terms of, I think that probably does fall under Comprehensive Planning 101 as well. But let's, Mark, let's take a look at the document and just kind of dive into that more deeply. I know you've been interested in the topic of guest speakers, so that would be a great place to continue the conversation. Okay, we have 3 more minutes. Any other final thoughts? Okay, I think we have enough homework between now and next meeting. So everybody take a look at the survey, answer the survey, give Larry final comments, and take a look at the slide deck. All can be found in Google Drive. The survey is the exception. There's the link to it is in your email. But to everybody who stuck with us to the end of the meeting on YouTube, thank you so much. We love that you're participating, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you during our broadcast on June 8th, and check out our website in the meantime for updates. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
What are my words I'm supposed to say? I motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second it.
Great. All
right.
in favor?
Bye.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.